talked a lot about your health, and I was wondering if we can talk now a little bit about your life, kind of what your life is like now and what you'd like to see in the future.
Well, I have a lot more alone time than I had before. I spend time with my grandchildren, about a day a week over there, and a night with my guys at poker. I don't play golf or sports and haven't great interest, so I don't have friends along those lines particularly. I do have some involvement with my church, but that doesn't take up a lot of my time. And I watch probably more television than I should. I also read a lot, but I would say my life is more isolated than it was years ago, certainly.
Right, and I'm guessing that this is probably due to the more recent loss of your wife.
Yeah, I would say so. We would go out at least once or twice a week to a movie or to a play, or we would take a trip every year or so, and I just don't have the energy or the inclination to do those things anymore because I don't have anybody to do it with. And most of my friends are still married and their wives are still alive, and that has caused a little more isolation with me, I think.
So I'm hearing that you're lonely.
Yes.
You're a little more isolated, and you're not having maybe the same type of social contacts that you used to before your wife passed.
Yeah, that's right, that's right.
Okay, so that's a big change.
Yes, a very large change, a very large change.
And so when you're thinking, and you said you see your grandkids though?
Yes,
and
yes.
that's largely a positive interaction?
Oh yes, that is.
Okay.
That is. They're noisy at times, but it's a good interaction, and I do take them separately and out of the house and away from their parents, so we have a good relationship.
Okay, so that's a positive in your life.
It is.
Okay.
But as they get older, I know they'll want to do less of that, so it's only right now that's a good thing.
Right, so you're sort of anticipating that kind
Yeah,
of
I'm afraid
future losses almost, in addition to kind of what you're still going through right now.
Yes, yes.
Now, looking ahead maybe a little bit, what do you see maybe in your future? I don't know if you thought about any goals?
Oh, I think the overarching thing has been with me, particularly since my wife has died, is the independence. The ability to drive, the ability to live in my home, the ability to make decisions about what I eat and where I go and when, how long I want to sleep or not, whether I want to nap or not. But the independence is a very important thing to me. And you've seen my medical records. I've enjoyed relatively good health, no heart or diabetes or anything like that. And so it's my hope that my health will continue on as it has been, and that aspect I'm feeling somewhat threatened about today, certainly with where we've gone. And I don't know what to make of all of that right now.
Right, so you're sort of confused about everything today.
Yes, it is, because it's just something new that I hadn't thought about before.
Sure, and that can seem sort of overwhelming at a time where you're still really in a kind of a state of change and adapting to kind of some of the changes in your life since your wife has passed away. But from what I'm hearing, you want to stay in charge of your life.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. If I had any strong goal at all, that would be it. And I know that somewhere down the line will diminish, but at least right now and at my present age, I really feel that I want to be in charge. And I think the other side is not being a burden to my children, either financially or medically. That's sort of where I am right now.
So you want to stay independent, you want to stay in control, and you don't want to do anything that might kind of interfere and kind of impair both your independence, impair your health, and kind of, in your words, to become a burden to either of your...
Yeah, they have their own families to raise, and,
Sure.
and so, they don't need me along for that kind of thing right now.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, some of the things we've talked about earlier, how you feel that they kind of fit into these goals, your goals of independence and your goals of kind of maintaining good health.
Well, I feel that my health is threatened by what you and Dr. Clark have indicated to me, and I had never considered that because I didn't feel my lifestyle was causing me any difficulties. I certainly wasn't a falling down drunk. I was not, it was not unusual for certainly people of my generation to drink at this level, even as younger people, which I don't necessarily see with younger people younger than me now, but certainly every house had a martini pitcher, and you don't see those things anymore, chrome usually. And so, it's a difference in health knowledge in the medical profession probably, but this has just never been pointed out to me, and it leaves me a little unhappy.
Yeah, so unhappy and maybe a little overwhelmed.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, so trying to figure out how to kind of fit this in. On the one hand, you're kind of happy with how things are going. On the other hand,
basically,
you want to kind of, to the best that you can, have independence and good health as you continue to age.
Yes.
So some of the things we've been talking about really then are kind of exactly how you might achieve that, and kind of what things you might be interested in doing.
Well, in some respects it sounds like, oh, stop drinking, right now. I mean, that's a little hard to conceive of for me because of past habits. I mean, certainly there's some self-soothing going on with having wine in the evening while you're watching TV and filling in the time.
Sure. So are you feeling that it's kind of an all or nothing, that in order?
Well, certainly some of the things that have been said suggest that to some degree, and I don't feel that that's realistic for me, and that upsets me too. So.
Okay, I can understand how that would be upsetting. So I think some of the things we need to think about next are to look at your goals of independence and good health, and to look at this kind of view of your drinking and how much we might be able to kind of look at them a little different, so it's not this all or nothing, so that we can come up with something that is right for you and right for your life. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, I guess we have to try something.
Okay.
Something.
I'm wondering if now we can talk a little bit more about a little bit about your drinking and some of the things that you think maybe are good about it, and maybe some of the things that might be a little less good, as we're looking, we were talking about your goals and what you want to do in the future.
Well, it's social. It's for the most part, pleasurable. Of course, that's what I thought about smoking before I quit.
Right.
But it's pleasurable. I can't quite envision being with a group of people and not drinking while all of them are, because that's the social interaction. So those are really the relative positives, and it helps me to forget things, my problems, as I talked about before. Negatively, maybe there is an issue of the ability to control that is impaired by some drinking, perhaps. Although I haven't noticed that, but it's, from what you're saying, that's a possibility, that I don't have as much control as I think I have.
Do you mean control over your health? Like we've talked about some health consequences, or do you mean while you're drinking?
Physical control, I think, yes. Not necessarily the health. That's really kind of a separate issue. Just control over situations, social situations, people, persons. And certainly I make some effort to not be with, I didn't even think about that, not be with my grandchildren after dinner time or late in the day. So that's not so good, that I have to self-monitor some of my activities. That's probably a negative thing. And the health is new to me. I mean, it's kind of an obvious thing that, yes, that's a negative, but that's kind of new to me. I'm thinking more on a more general basis of the way I'm living from day to day. But that's about all I can think about.
Okay, so it's a pretty big list. So you have what you've identified, kind of the positives or things that are good. It's social, pleasurable. It helps you for forgetting about your problems. Or I guess I'd maybe talk a little bit more about that, because I'm not 100% sure that that's necessarily good. I understand where you're coming from.
Well, and you know, watching television really does do the same thing. I mean, anything that takes my mind off stuff. But when I get to thinking too much, a glass of wine helps me not think so much.
It helps you not think that much at that time.
Yes, at the time.
And
at
then
the time.
What happens?
Soothes.
And then, so you're soothed temporarily?
No, you know, for that evening.
For that evening. And then...
Next day, it's, you know, it's part of that reason why I'm on Cymbalta too, of course. There's a loneliness in some of that as well.
Okay, so it gets
But,
rid of it, it sounds like
temporarily.
temporarily. So, but maybe there's the bigger issue, it's still there.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
And maybe that issue needs to be addressed too, so.
Okay, so I think we've identified something. So I think maybe we can say that's maybe a positive and a negative.
Mhm.
It eases it, but there's a bigger issue that's been getting covered up. I want to just go back to the physical control, because I'm just not sure I'm tracking with you on that. Could you just go?
To which...
You said it was a negative, the physical, you said it was a physical
well,
control issue.
It's obvious that, not obvious, that's the wrong word. You know, I only drink 3 beers when I'm out with the guys instead of 4, because at 4 I do not feel as in control as I should be. That's really what I'm referring to.
Okay, sorry, for some reason
yeah,
I wasn't getting that.
But with the wine at home, you know, if I'm not feeling in control, I can go to bed or something like that. But I mean, that's not the issue there.
Okay.
But that's really kind of the kind of thing that I'm referring
Thanks,
to.
that's very helpful. And you've identified that you just realized that when you're drinking a little more, you purposely sort of stay away from your grandkids, which we talked about earlier is a real positive right now in your life, being with them and being able to spend time with them. If we look at the list that we just kind of went over of things that are good and not so good, what do you make of this and the things on the list?
Well, I'd never thought about the negatives at all.
Okay, so that's really new.
That's really new, and so that's really what I'm looking at. The other part, you know, to me is fine, but the fact that there are negatives is not something I've ever thought about, particularly since I'm not, you know, a drunk in that generalized category. I just drink. And so I'd never focused on how it was harming things.
Right, so you're having now, taking a different look at it.
Yes, absolutely. That's certainly what we've come to at this point, as far as I can tell, that I'm being forced to kind of confront myself, and that's not always a comfortable thing.
Right, so when you think, I guess, about some of the negatives, what does that bring up?
I don't want my grandchildren or my children to think ill of me. I don't obviously want the physical consequences that certainly could be looming.
Right, so you're...
And I think one of my greater concerns that I hadn't thought about is the medication interaction, because I thought what I was doing was relatively benign, and therefore the interaction was not something that I had to even be concerned about. And so it's given me something more to think about along those lines.
And so we brought up...
And the other part of it is, if you do that, then you look at the pluses and you say, how can I keep the pluses? Because they still are pluses. They are part of my life, and so I have to figure out how to retain pluses in my life, whether it's this through drinking or otherwise. And so that changes the focus on a lot of things.
Right, so you're talking really about how to maintain some of the positive aspects of your life. You talk about socializing and maybe being able to forget about your problems, things that make you feel good, and kind of balancing that on the other hand with, not wanting your grandkids or your children to feel bad about you, thinking about these health consequences in a different way, and kind of how do those kind of two sides reconcile?
Exactly, and I said I could not conceive of myself drinking per se. That just, right now, that is not something that I can get a grip on, and maybe that's simply because this is so new, but I still can't quite conceive of that yet.
Okay, I can understand that, but I think that's getting a little bit ahead of ourselves here. What if we just talked about change in general, and what might be some kind of, like we did here, some good things about changing and some less good things about changing?
Well, I'm not good with change.
Okay, so change is hard.
Let's acknowledge that, but I guess it is for everybody.
It
But
sure
change is hard.
Change is hard.
Making a greater effort to fill time is a worthwhile change.
So when you say fill time, do you mean not
Finding other activities. I really haven't reached out to try and figure out other ways to expand my time. I guess one thing that occurs to me is volunteerism. I mean, by filling some of the time may make some of the other needs not so great, and would provide a social network unrelated to alcohol.
Okay, so
And that's like something it appears I need to do, and maybe I should stop playing poker, but I haven't yet reached that.
again, I think we're
I'm not
getting
quite
ahead.
there. No, I don't think that's going to happen.
No, but
That's not going to happen.
But what you're saying about finding some other activities, and it kind of addresses the social needs. And I think if I'm picking up on what you're saying, instead of maybe using either the television or the drinking to kind of numb out what you're feeling, then kind of fill it up in a different way and have it be maybe a more positive versus this kind of covering up. Am I on target? Okay. Okay, so anything else in terms of good or not so good things about thinking of change in this area? We want to keep poker.
Well, and this esophageal distress is now reached a point of severe annoyance,
Okay.
and whether it is possible to still consume alcohol, I don't know.
Okay, so
Medically, I don't know if that dictates something else. And I don't know the consequences of that condition either yet.
right, and that'll be something for Dr. Clark, but
Yeah.
if I'm hearing you that a positive or a good consequence of change might be a way of kind of treating your current medical condition, the GERD that's really aggravating you. Maybe that can, I imagine that's pretty annoying to have that kind of irritation.
It's
You
like a
said it
very
hap-
severe heartburn is what it's like.
And you said it happens at night. So.
Yes, which is not a good time.
No,
You can't sleep
never
as
a
well.
good time, but yeah, it interferes with
Sleep.
sleeping. Okay. Anything else?
Nothing more that I can think of right now.
Nothing else. Okay, so when we're looking at kind of change, we have, sort of on the downside that change is hard, which it's tough. You've been doing this a long time. Some of the positives, I think, that you've identified, the things that would be benefits, were that you could have some other activities. You'd be able to keep your socialization, but maybe find some other outlets. Want to keep poker, and it might become a way that you might be able to look at some of your current health problems, and potentially even look at some of, we had talked a little bit about risk.
Yeah, avoiding future health
Avoiding
problems
future
really
ones.
is as much an impact here as anything else.
Yeah, so what's your reaction to that?
Overall, relatively positive. I don't know how I can achieve it, but right now I feel positive about where we are.
Okay, good. So I think that the idea now, if I'm hearing you right, is that you've identified some things, and the idea that there could be some changes is something that you feel ready to entertain?
I could entertain some, I think.
Okay, great.
I think so.
Okay.
It's hard.
Yeah, change is hard.